Hi you guys, in today's video I would love to show you how to infuse honey with pretty much anything you like in terms of herbs. It's a super simple process, just takes maybe a day or two of going really low and slow, and I want to show you the technique if you're using dried herbs or fresh herbs like what I have right here from my garden. And I think it's just such an underestimated way of making something great out of your honey and also bringing medicine into honey so that it's really tasty, that I just love to expose this a little bit more. Also, the other beautiful thing is that all the herbs I'm going to be talking about today that I just picked for today's video, which is thyme, rosemary, and sage, are like the classical, right, of Western herbalism. They also happen to have a lot of different hormonal benefits. And going into the colder months, we want to support our immune system as well, whether it's the coronavirus or just a regular flu or regular cold. We just want to up our immune system and support it the best way possible. So I want to show you just really how simple the infusion is, and we'll just get a little bit of, I always like to wait for a little bit for a few more people to jump on, so before I start the demo. So before I do that, why don't I just tell you a little bit about the benefits of these herbs. Yeah, if I can have the book. So I'm referencing from Energetics of Western Herbs, is the book that we used when I was going through herbal school. And just want to kind of bring out a little bit of just really the biochemistry and appreciation, the medicinal benefits of these herbs and how powerful they are. A lot of times we go like, oh, rosemary is great for brain, but turns out it's actually a lot more than just the brain. So let me start off with thyme. Gosh, it's just like, just standing right in here, it's just like, whoa, I'm getting this like this sensation of just absolutely of being so picked up and so refreshed. And you will learn that actually rosemary has a lot of function on the brain, which a lot of women in perimenopause and menopause, you know what I'm talking about. You walk into the room going like, where are the keys? So let's talk about thyme. One of the big constituents in here is called thymol. So that's a form of essential oil. That's what gives it like the beautiful smell. And you know how I often talk about, like, when you're using herbs, make sure the herbs, even when they're dry, smell really potent, like there is this freshness to them, is because you want, like in a case of thyme, you want the thymol to be fully available, because this is partly where the medicine comes from. So I'm just going to give you the highlights. It's just so fascinating. So thyme warms the lungs. It promotes expectoration, which means that if you have a lot of phlegm, if you have like this cough that just sits there and it's like this wet cough, it's going to help you tremendously with that. It helps with relieving wheezing, and it reduces infections. It also warms the exterior, so it promotes sweating and dispels colds from inside the body. It also helps to open the sinuses and relieve sinus pain. How about that? Part of it is because it is also a huge thyme, like thyme oil, for instance. I use it in my cleaning products in the house together with water and vinegar. My housekeeper cleans the house using thyme oil because it's a huge disinfectant as well. And so not surprisingly, that helps with sinus, because sinus is typically caused by candida. Candida gets killed by thymol. It warms the intestines. It helps with decongestion of the liver and promotes digestion. It improves appetite, but doesn't make you hungry. It just helps, like if you're not. It resolves dysbiosis and eliminates parasites. I mean, for that to happen, you have to have a higher dose, not the doses we're going to be using here. On the hormonal side of things, it promotes menstruation. It relieves amenorrhea and stops discharges. So like if you were having discharges in the middle of the month, that could help. It also tonifies, so it relieves fatigue, it restores nerves and adrenals, it strengthens the mind, raises blood pressure, enhances immunity. Now, when it says raises blood pressure, it's not going to give you high blood pressure. It will raise it if it is low. Like I tend to be on the low side. It was going to help me bring it up. Enhances immunity, promotes tissue repair, reduces clotting. Okay, so I mean, this is just one little thyme. All right, let me move on to the other one, which is gonna be, I believe that's gonna be rosemary next. Yeah, so let me just open up on rosemary. Is one of my favorites. One of the things that we had to do in school is to be with an herb for a week, and I didn't do rosemary, but a lot of my colleagues did rosemary, because you could pick from 4 herbs. So I picked something else. I didn't pick rosemary. And a lot of my colleagues said that rosemary just gave them such an incredible mental boost. I have a brain tea in my house, and one of the big herbs in there is rosemary. So whenever I feel a little bit brain dead, a little bit foggy, not too energetic in the afternoons, a lot of time I will do the brain tea, and I think it's mainly because of rosemary that has got a wonderful pick-me-up quality to it, like really, turns you on in your mental capacity. So it warms the interior, stimulates the heart and circulation, dispels colds and relieves debility. It warms the exterior, promotes sweating, dispels wind. Okay, that's more of a Chinese medicine term. Opens the sinuses and relieves pain as well. Warms the stomach, intestine, promotes digestion, relieves bloating, promotes bile flow, which is huge, you guys, for hormone balance. When we talk about bile flow, bile actually binds up estrogens, and I've been talking about estrogen just an hour before this, so if you want to catch that video. Let's see, it also helps with, restores brain function, calms nerves, promotes tissue repair, okay? So incredible stuff. And then the last one I want to just cover is sage. So let's see. So generates strength and relieves fatigue, restores neuroendocrine immune function, enhances immunity, restores the adrenal cortex and raises blood pressure. Again, is only when you have low blood pressure. It's not going to give you high blood pressure. Increases estrogen and harmonizes the menopause. So women in menopause are going to be low in estrogen, and sage can help with that. Promotes digestion, improves appetite, stops discharge. Let's see what else. Relieves wheezing. Again, helps with sweating and helps the immune system. So you can see all three of them have very similar qualities to them, right? So, so you just imagine like having something like this every day, just a teaspoon, a two, instead of regular like maple syrup. Or nothing wrong with maple syrup, but I'm just, one of the big things we do at Hormones Balance, we try to enhance your nutrition with as many nutrients as possible. So everything that you put in your body really matters, right? It's almost like enhanced. Everything is enhanced. So let me show you how simple infusion can be. So the first thing is that you can either use fresh herbs or you can use dried herbs, okay? I tend to prefer to use fresh just because they just have more flavor in them at this point, and they're gonna be imparting all these oils that I've been talking about, all that medicine we talked about. All of that is present in all different constituents they contain, and I just find that my honey is gonna be a lot more flavorful when I use fresh ones. So we are going into winter months now. Your garden has to come to a close. If you're harvesting now, this is a really great way of infusing your honey. Now, do you have to use these three herbs? I also have ginger in here because I just like a little bit of ginger in my honey. Again, for digestion, for immune system, warming things up. Not necessarily. Like if you have any other herbs that you would rather use, or if you don't, for example, like rosemary, they just don't put it in. It's not a problem. The technique I'm going to show you applies to any fresh herb that you're using, okay? So why don't we get started? The first thing I'm going to do, so let's see, what do you need? You need fresh herbs, okay? You need something to kind of, we call it blister them. And so I'm just going to use a traditional pestle and mortar just because I grew up with that stuff. I grew up in Asia, so I like that kind of stuff. I'm using local honey. There's no such thing as organic honey. Did you know that? Because you don't know where the bees are going, so you can't call it organic. And then I'm just having a vessel that we're going to be putting all the herbs into. And then I'm going to be using a hot bath using, in this case, Instant Pot, but I'll show you another technique that uses also a stovetop method. It's just a little bit more, you need to babysit it a little bit more. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing we want to do is take these herbs and bruise them. Now the bruising is just a step that is, I would say it just basically kind of agitates the herb a little bit. And what we're then gonna do is it just releases a lot of the constituents that I was talking about. You don't need to do a lot. You don't put it through a mixer. You bring it to a point where bruising doesn't mean, chopping it up, and you can if you want to, but you don't have to. Cheryl, can you smell it? Cheryl's wearing a mask, so she can't probably smell very much, but it's so this is, it doesn't look all that much different, but you can, if you really look at the details, it does have a little bit of bruising. So what we're gonna do is gonna pack it in down here into my vessel. Okay, I'm gonna do the same thing with rosemary. With rosemary, I'm gonna take the branch off just because I'm afraid that the wooden part could potentially taste a little bitter in the honey, so I don't want that. Let me just do the outside of my, because it makes a lot of noise. Okay, so we have a little bit of bruising going on. I'm gonna pack it in here. Okay, and then next is sage. Exactly the same technique. Oh, there's more rosemary here, so I'm just gonna get that. Oh, and you know, it's kind of sticky, like I could feel the stickiness, and again, the stickiness, that's where all the good stuff is. So with sage, similarly, I'm gonna try to take the stems off, just in case I always do that, so I've never tried it with the stems. If you've tried it with the stems, let me know if it comes out to be a little bit bitter or not. I just watched this Japanese cooking show, and they always keep their stations so clean, and I thought, oh my god, I could never participate in this because I am one very messy chef. All right, same thing, bruising. Can we see anything, Cheryl? Okay, all right, bruised, and put it in. So you can see when you bruise it, is actually you don't get that much. Oh, I've got more in here. So again, stems off. Who here has tried making herbal infusions, and what did you use and how did it show up? How did it turn out for you? So actually I could have used a smaller vessel. Cheryl, would you mind grabbing for me the smaller one? That was actually the original intention, but didn't. As you can see, when you pound it down, is actually pretty concentrated down too. Thank you so much. I'm gonna use a smaller vessel. This typically, that's what I use for my infusions. So let's just transfer that over here. Yep. Because what we're gonna do, one of the things you will learn here, one of the things that we wanna do is we want to get a maximum extraction, maximum flavor in this honey. But in order to do that, you basically need sufficient herbs, right? One of the things that, you know, one of the girls in our team was very fascinated by this, and so she tried making an infusion. She put 1 sprig of rosemary and like 1 sprig of sage or whatever it was, and then she covered it with honey, and then she declared after 2 weeks of infusion that it didn't taste like much. So that's the reason why you need to have a good amount of herbs. So, you know, I don't have a recipe for you as such. I mean, we've got some other recipes that Jean will post, but using other herbs. But basically the general rule is that you want to pack your vessel with herbs and then cover it with honey. That is your recipe, okay? Now I'm going to use a little bit of ginger here as well. Now, if you're not using, let me just show you a really cool trick. If you are not using organic ginger, then you want to definitely peel it. Mine is organic, so I don't have to peel it, but I want to just show you a really quick trick. In order to peel the skin off, you're basically using a back of a spoon, and that's what happens. You know, you very quickly you get this off, right? So I'm not gonna do that because mine is organic, so I actually want to keep the skin on, and I'm gonna do exactly the same thing, and pound it, open it up. Okay, and then again, put in our vessel. So you can see when I press things down, like 3/4 of the jar is already filled up with herbs. Okay, so the next step is really simple. We're gonna be covering that up with honey. This is, you know, I'm using local honey, so brand doesn't really matter. Find something that's local to you, that is unpasteurized, that is has not been heated, and so at first it doesn't look like much honey can go in. So what you do is then you pick up a knife And can we do some close-ups? Yeah. And then what you're gonna do is then you start letting the honey penetrate the whole vessel. There's a bit of air that's in there. We also want the air out. Okay. So it's beginning to penetrate. So that creates more space for us to top up honey. Okay. So I'm curious, what are your favorite herbs and what would you be putting into your favorite infusion? Okay. At this point, the honey is kind of viscous, and so it's pretty normal. When we warm it up, it's going to be a lot more. So you can see here, there's dried herbs at the bottom. So we want the honey to penetrate. See how it's flowing down? So that gives us an opportunity to, again, top it up. So it's a bit of a process. You might need to repeat it 3-4 times. You want to make sure it gets right to the bottom. We want to have as much surface area covered up of these herbs so that we have like really beautiful, flavorful honey. Okay, so I think we're pretty good. One of the things you will notice, you will learn as you're going through the infusion is that as the herbs get heated up slightly, they will start sinking to the bottom. So you will, and that's perfectly fine. At which point you could add more, like whatever herbs you have in your garden, you can then start putting even more herbs in. It's up to you. But even with this amount, it's gonna be a beautifully infused honey that's super flavorful. So let me talk about how to apply heat and the different techniques. So there is a technique called slow infusion or sun infusion and fast infusion. So sun infusion basically means that you put the honey outside and you infuse it for a month or so. I don't know about you, but I'm not a patient type, so I'm not gonna do that. Plus, we have bears outside here. That's really asking for trouble. A slow infusion, so that's a sun infusion, right? Put in the sun heats it up. The slow infusion is basically covering this up with cheesecloth and leaving it on a counter for 2 weeks to 4 weeks, okay? That's another method. Again, for me, it's a little bit too slow because I'm like, winter is coming. You know, I love the quality of these herbs, right? They really warm you up. I tend to be on the cold side. Ginger is gonna warm me up. It's gonna help with the immune system. It's gonna help with the digestion. It's gonna help with estrogen. Perfect, I want it sooner. So I wanna show you another method that they say that, you know, some herbalists say that you can do this within 4 hours of just using heat and infusing it. But I have found that if I can get it going for like 48 hours on a very low heat, then it produces the best results. And so for that to happen, I'm gonna be using my Instant Pot. And Instant Pot, so I'm gonna explain Instant Pot first, but you can also use a slow cooker if you have one. So I'm just gonna move this down. You can use a slow cooker, or you can use a stovetop method of basically using a double boiler, okay? If you've, those are your options. Let me be like a Japanese chef and clean up my workstation. All right, so what I have in here is basically water, right? So there is, it's covered in water, and the amount of water you wanna put in is just enough for you to put in your vessel and cover it to the top, or to, you know, right like half an inch before. So basically right now I have water up to here, and that's all we need. It's gonna stop evaporating, so you're gonna be topping it up. What you wanna do is you wanna select the slow cooker, and I'm not gonna be doing this right now, but you're gonna select slow cooker, and then you can have less, normal, or more. You definitely wanna choose the slowest one, the lowest one possible. Why? Is because, you know, even though it's a slow cooker, when you do it medium or high, it tends to overheat the honey. When you overheat the honey, you're basically ending up frying those herbs, and then the more bitter they become. What I have learned is that the slower and longer you go, slower meaning slower heat, lower heat, but over extended period of time, the more fragrances you get out of it, but not bitterness, okay? And so, so slow cooker, you wanna set it on low, and then I will typically do 3 hours. I put it on for 3 hours. And then after the 3 hours, it's already, you will see the honey is super viscous, is very liquid, is pretty hot at this point. Now, how do you know when you overheat your honey? Is when you put your finger in And if it's warm, you can still touch it. But if it burns you, this is when you know this is too much, and you need to set it then to keep it warm. So after the 3 hours where the slow cooker is over, then it sets itself up. I set it up for keep it warm, right? And the keeping it warm keeps it warm for, I think it's like another 7-8 hours. And that is really where the beauty of the extraction, I feel, happens. And then, you know, as I go, you want to taste it. And you'll be like, oh, you know, it's like, it's infused, but let me try a little bit more. And when you're first starting out, maybe you don't know what the point is, but, you know, when you do it more often, like somebody like me, I do it like almost every week, then, you know, I'll taste it, be like, I think I can infuse it even more. Like it can have more body and more fragrance, right? And flavor. And so I oftentimes then do another 3 hours again, and then it keeps it for another 6 hours on warm. And this is, to me, this is when the honey is done. So typically that takes me 1.5 to 2 days to complete the full process, okay? So I hope this is helpful. What you're gonna do then is, once this is over, it's gonna look a little bit like this. You know, the herbs are gonna be slightly down, settled to the bottom, right? And then what you're gonna then do is you wanna do it while the honey is still warm, because then it's easiest to work with it. You basically are going to take a cheesecloth like this, right? And actually a better vessel would be using a Pyrex measuring cup, and then you basically put your cheesecloth right in here, and you're gonna be straining your honey through the cheesecloth. Squeeze it out. You want to wait for a little bit for it to cool down, because when the honey is hot, it's gonna burn your hands. You squeeze it all out, and then what you do have is this beautiful infused honey that is, you know, is good to go. Now, a couple of things that you need to remember. One is that you don't want to cover your honey when you're using fresh herbs and you're infusing. Why? Is because you simply will make the honey go moldy. When you're using fresh herbs, there's quite a lot of you know, moisture, right, in those herbs. And so what's going to happen is, if you covered it, or if you were using the Instant Pot, or you're using the stovetop method, or using your slow cooker, what would happen is, if you covered it, that all the moisture from the herbs are gonna go back into the honey. And that way, you're gonna, when that happens, this is where honey goes moldy. So we don't want that to happen, and this is the reason why you want to do it always in an open vessel. This will cause the water to start going down, so you want to be topping up the water as you go. Whatever method you're using, this evaporation happens. But that evaporation is not going to create water or mold in your honey, okay? Now, there's a difference. There's a difference with using dry herbs. The easy thing about dried herbs is you can cover them, leave it out in the sun. You can do whatever and have them covered, because dried herbs don't have any moisture in them, okay? So that is there is a big difference there. Yeah, so I hope this was a simple you know, idea for you. Going into cold months is one of the great ways of protecting yourself. One of the things that Colleen is asking, is thyme powder okay? So I wouldn't use thyme powder, Colleen, for a couple of reasons. One is that you know, I don't even actually keep any powdered herbs in my kitchen, because powder is so oxidized by the time you use it for anything. It's kind of like dead, and so it doesn't have this constituents we are after. I will use dried thyme that is fairly fresh, so freshly, you know, dried, but not in a powder form. Also, the other thing about powder is that when you do the straining, well, what happened is the powder is going to make the whole honey look kind of murky, and for some people it doesn't really matter, but I feel like it doesn't feel very palatable. But I think the first reason was the more reason not to do that. Katya is asking, what is the name of the book? The book that I read from is called The Energetics of Western Herbs. It comes from Peter Holmes. That's one of the books that we were using in our school, and it comes in there's another book right in here. So amazing books, and super well researched, and I have a lot of respect for whoever creates books like that, because it's pretty much probably 30 years of his life in there. Colleen is asking, I have chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, and now in perimenopause. What helps with night sweats, hot flashes, and flu feeling? So, yeah, I think this is a bigger question. It's not so much for honey. Jean, if we can post maybe the thing about hot flashes. So hot flashes a lot of time can, low progesterone, and then regulating your blood sugar balance is our key with hot flashes. And so take a look at the article that we have on hot flashes. I wouldn't say that this is something that's going to help with hot flashes per se. There's a lot of other things you need to take out, the things that cause hot flashes in the first place, to really enjoy the benefits of it. Did you see any questions coming up?
How to use it?
Oh, how do you use it? Okay, that's a great question. So, so my question for you back is, how do you use regular honey, right? So some people say, I think you said, I'm talking to Cheryl, who's my assistant, and she's behind a camera. Cheryl, like, you asked me the same question too, right? And you said you use it in tea. So so that's one way of doing it. Absolutely, you can put it on tea. Whenever you use maple syrup and something, for example, pancakes, just use this instead. Honestly, my favorite way is like whenever I have a bit of a sweet tooth and I'm like, I feel like something, I don't have anything at home, I will just go and have a teaspoon or 2 teaspoons or tablespoon even sometimes of a honey that really helps me. And so I have it, that just helps that sugar craving. So I have it actually on my counter most of the time, and I'll just do like a little scoop of that. The other thing I just remember you can add to all of this is garlic, right? And garlic is hugely antimicrobial. It's going to help with tremendously also with any kind of flus and colds. And so that's not an easy one. Like, you don't want to put maybe that on pancakes when you've got like blueberries and stuff with the garlic in it. But what you can do then, a lot of people have told us that there was a recipe that I did last year, boosting your immune system. Actually, this was this year when Corona just started happening, with like lemon peel and ginger and garlic in it. And so people have said that just put it on the kitchen counter, and they're just like, this is like my daily protocol. I just feel so good when I have it. And I think one of the things about medicinal herbs like that, medicinal honeys like that, is that you just treat it like a feel-good, little part of your day, of your ritual. You reach out for your teaspoon and have a little bit. I woke up this morning and we have horrible quality of air here in Colorado today because of the fires. And so I tend to be very sensitive. My respiratory system is very sensitive. So I had so much of phlegm, I could barely talk. I kept clearing my throat. I had a call with my team this morning. I was like, they're like, are you cold? Are you sick? Are you sick? Do you have allergies? And I'm like, no, I don't have allergies. But then I realized it was the smoke that caused this. And so what I did was, I have infused honey with something called grindelia. I posted about it a few weeks ago. This beautiful, inconspicuous, yellow flower that just grows everywhere on the side of the roads in many states, probably in yours too. It's sticky. It's too late now in the season. I'll do it again. I'll do grindelia when it comes up in summer next year. Yeah. But what it was is grindelia really helps to open up respiratory pathways, and so I just had one or 2 teaspoons this morning, and immediately all cleared out. As you can see, I'm not clearing my throat. Everything is just completely gone. So it's just see this as like your medicinal box, right? Okay. You have anything else? No? All right. Well, I hope you guys, this was inspiring and super simple to make. And post and tell us what are the herbs that you're going to be using in your herbal infusion. All right. Thanks, everybody, and I'll see you next time.